This is the match between Grandmaster Venkataraman versus Grandmaster Nakamura. This match took place at the FIDE World Cup in 2023. This is round 2, game 2, and the opening is the Queen's Indian Defense. The first thing we're going to do is take a look at the patterns. This is the recognition of patterns. Now, although one idea is to recognize patterns or move sequences, later on you're going to want to stir things up because openings do intend to have a reputation for being dull. So you're going to need to create imbalances, stir things up in order to make the game exciting. Now, the Queen's Indian Defense does have a reputation for being dull, but not in all cases, because black does have some sharp options. So, in the game, d4, knight f6, c4 was played, followed by e6 and knight f3. Now let's go back. White could play knight f3 here. b6 and bishop f4. Now, white could go for a London system with e3, e6, c3. And after h3, the bishop is developed to d3 and the knight on b to d2. So after d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, b6, g3 was played in the game. Another idea is after b6 or earlier, you could play a3. And the idea of a3 is to stop bishop b4. That is the idea of playing a3, and you will continue with normal development with knight c3. And two things you're going to have to be ready for when you're playing against the Queen's Indian Defense. Black does have the option to play the bishop to a6 with pressure on c4. And to that, your response is playing the queen to c2. Followed by knight c3, etc. Another thing is that you're going to have to be ready to answer the option that black has after c5. c5 can be answered by playing the d pawn to d5. So here's one example. After knight f3, b6, a3 to stop bishop b4. And if black continues with c5, then d5. Bishop a6 attacking the c4 pawn. Queen c2. E takes d5. C takes d5, and black cannot play knight takes the d pawn, thinking that the pawn is free, because after queen e4 check, knight e7, the rook falls. Knight f3, b6, g3. Now, when you fianchetto, you're saying that you want a positional battle here. For example, bishop b7, bishop g2, and bishop b4 check. White played the bishop to d2. During the time of the match, black decided to play solid. There are other moves that could have been made. The move played in the game was bishop takes d2 check. The other move is to play the queen to e7. So that if white did take, then queen takes and check. But usually after queen e7, white castles, black can castle, and then bishop to g5. Pawns are played systematically. How do you want to play the pawns if you're playing black? White just castle. The two main options are d6 and d5. In the game, d6 was played. Another option is to play the pawn to d5 right away, which leads to black having the pawn structure after queen b2, rook e8, e3, and a5. Now the question is, do you want this structure on the queen side? After a3, queen e7, and you have, yes, you have this pawn structure, and you'll have to decide how you're going to play on that side. And definitely the rook is played so that should white capture the pawn on a5 and black did recapture, then the bishop on b7 would not fall to the queen on b2, so rook c7 is played. So that is one way to go, but another way to go is to play what was played in the actual game, which was d6. And the game continued. Queen c2, the attack on the c5 pawn, rook d1, trade on d4, queen to e7. Playing the pawns systematically this way, black does keep the pawn structure intact and can always swing the rook over from f8 to d8 if need be. Now let's go back to the starting position, and I'm just going to play through the actual game until reaching the end game, and from there I will give some other lines that could have been played. d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, b6, g3, bishop b7, bishop g2, bishop b4 check, bishop d2, Bishop takes d2, queen takes d2, and both sides castle. d6, queen c2, c5, rook d1, c takes d4, rook takes d4, and queen e7. Knight c3, knight c6, rook d1, rook ac8, rook ac1, rook f d8, b3, d5, cd5, knight b4, queen b2, knight on b takes d5, knight takes d5, and bishop takes d5. Knight e5, bishop takes d2, rook takes d8, check, queen takes d8, rook takes c8, queen takes c8, king takes g2. Post, middle game, end game. Another move is to play the queen to c5 and not go for the trade at this moment. But after knight d3, queen c6, check, pawn f3, and now knight d5, king to f2, f6, queen d4, king f7, h4, queen c7, queen g4, h6 is one move, and white could reply h5, queen c3, queen g6 check, and king f8. There is knight d3, f6, h4, and instead of playing h6, then there's the move queen to c2, and now queen to a4, and these are just other alternative lines that could have been played if you wanted to keep the game going. Thank you for watching, and that is all I have for now, and stay tuned for my next video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share.